Welcome to Leaders Unplugged. I am thrilled to be joined today by the team from Nextdoor, Tony and Alexis. We're going to talk about leveraging AI to make more human-centered recruiters. Can you both introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis, currently a lead recruiter at Nextdoor. I've been with Nextdoor a little over 6 years. Today, I focus mostly on product and technical leadership roles, although I've supported pretty much every part of the company at one point or another during my 6 years.
Awesome.
Over to you.
And Tony.
We didn't practice that part. I'm Tony Castellanos. I lead compensation and talent acquisition here at Nextdoor. Those are things that don't often go together, but I think it's worked really well for our team. We then are able to have broad conversations about being competitive in the talent market while also staying true to our pay principles and ultimately making the best hiring and business decisions that we can for the team and the company. So, and excited to be here. Thank you all for joining.
Awesome. I bet we're going to get some more questions on that. But just to kick us off, Tony, let's go back several months. How did you get this idea and what did you all build?
Well, I was lucky to attend a CodeSignal customer advisory board meeting. And this was back in November of 2024, where we got a preview of an AI interview tool that was aimed at customer support reps. So what it did is it simulated an escalation case. So the CS rep would play themselves, and the AI system, which was named Ryan for us, would call in with an issue that needed to be resolved. And I would say that, today we see AI interviews popping up around the place, but 6 months ago, this was relatively controversial. Putting a candidate with AI instead of a human was very much up for debate. But it was really interesting to see the interaction, right? The AI was very responsive, and things went well as the human demoer worked to resolve the issue. Of course, like we in the audience, were all very curious about what happens if this goes sideways. So the person running the demo, threw out to Ryan, the AI system, Ryan, I don't care that you have a problem. Tough luck, deal with it. And we in the audience were like, okay, here we go. What's going to happen? And it was about a half a second before Ryan responded with are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. And it was just amazing to see how adaptable, dynamic, multifaceted this system was. And those are all things that recruiters face when they hop on calls with candidates for the first time, right? They're reacting to what's being given to them. And there's just no good way to practice that, right? Because you're either thrown into the deep end and you're talking to actual candidates, which has risks, or you're role playing with a teammate. And if we're all honest with ourselves, those aren't taken very seriously. So
they're so awkward. They just feel so awkward.
It's either super stressful because it's your manager's manager, or it's
right.
your buddy who you're just phoning it in and trying to, run out the clock and get out of there. So, but there's this opportunity to create these lifelike training exercises where you could customize and tailor it to the specific content and topics that you wanted to. And it was just, it was really interesting to contemplate the possibilities that affords us. So we decided to give it a go.
And what inspired you to do that? And how did you think about tailoring that for your use case?
Well, for us, I should say Alexis was the architect of all this, so she should probably take that question.
Right. So Alexis, let's go over to you and say, Tony came back and was like, I met Ryan, the AI candidate. What did you think about all of this?
Yeah. When he first mentioned it,
yeah.
Honestly, I had probably a healthy mix of curiosity, hesitation. It was definitely exciting. I could see the potential, but I wasn't quite sure how it would land with our team because we really value authenticity and human connection so deeply. We've really spent years building this culture of trust and partnership on our recruiting team. So I just didn't want to introduce a tool that didn't reflect that. But, as we explored it more, I just looked for ways where we could make learn, ours. How could we preserve our values? How could we level up training? And so, like Tony said, I think what won, me over definitely was the opportunity. It was so flexible and customizable. And so we could really build these scenarios that felt, real life to both recruiters and Nextdoor as a brand.
So when you were thinking about what you wanted to roll out did you think about different candidate scenarios, or how did you go from seeing this example to like, this is what we want to roll out that's really going to help our teams? Tony, do you want to start?
Oh, I think we got into the weeds there early on, like, oh, we could create all these different candidate archetypes, right? We could have these different kinds of functions, but ultimately we had to take a step back and redefine what it meant to deliver content, because you're moving from this legacy training system where you're explaining step by step, this is what we want everybody to do, into Learn, where you're more showing recruiters what to do and you're guiding them through learning paths. So we started with creating the framework, which was more of a porting of concepts and ideas from our training rather than copy pasting the material. And then we filled it in with more of the specifics around things like, Nextdoor is in the midst of a really exciting product transformation, right? And so, we wanted to make sure we layered that in. But again, this is one where the designer is right below me here, I think, on the screen. So she gets all the stuff. I have the great fortune of working with somebody who's far more thoughtful and creative in all of these domains than I am.
He's giving me way too much credit, so that I'll keep owning this.
Well, Alexis, can you kind of talk us through the demo? And I know I put you on the spot and I said, could you show us? So doing a live demo is incredibly stressful. I'll just acknowledge that. But if you wouldn't mind, I think seeing is believing, and it's so incredible to see what you've built with the CodeSignal team and how you rolled that out.
Yes, absolutely. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen.
The pressure of a live demo.
Gosh, thank you so much, Tony, for volunteering me.
Anytime.
Give me 1 second. Can you see it?
We did, but then it went away.
Oops.
Maybe
Let's
share
try that
again if you can. If not, I'll just ask Tony some questions, make him tap dance for you. Since he's put you on the spot.
No worries. Is
There
it
we
back up
go.
now?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Feel free to interrupt if the sound doesn't come through. But so I have it pulled up to one of the role plays. Over here on the left, you can see some of the lesson content, and it walks you through like little bite-sized chunks and a couple different, screens before you get to this. In the middle, you can kind of see it gave just some context on this candidate persona and some of the objectives. I'm not necessarily going to follow these objectives. Like my real goal is to show you sort of how interactive and dynamic the AI bot is. So I just want to kind of ask a couple of open-ended questions to Milo so you can kind of get a feel for how the AI is responsive. So go ahead, click start conversation.
Hey, thanks for making time today. Over the past few years, I've been leading some of Google's largest Fortune 100 deals, consistently beating quota. And I'm interested in how that experience could translate to a more agile environment like Nextdoor.
Hey, Milo. Sounds like you have had a really impressive run at Google, but I'd be curious to hear what has you interested in Nextdoor?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I've loved the pace and scale at Google. But after 8 years, I'm looking for a space where my impact is more direct and visible. I'm drawn to Nextdoor because your platform is pretty unique. There's this strong community mission, but also so much untapped potential for brands to connect locally. I want to see if my enterprise level experience, especially around building long-term trust with big partners, could actually help accelerate what you're doing.
Awesome.
Honestly, I'm also curious about the kind of autonomy and influence I might have here versus at a larger company.
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping you could walk me through maybe one of the, long-term relationships and how you kind of build trust with your partners.
Definitely. One example that stands out was with a Fortune 100 CPG client. When I first inherited the account, they were running fairly standard campaigns, seeing decent results, but it was very transactional. I started by digging into their business challenges and invested a lot of time listening and understanding how digital could actually impact their bigger goals, not just campaign metrics. From there, I brought together different teams, creative, data science, even product, so we could offer ideas well beyond the initial brief. We developed a multi-channel partnership that included things like data-driven local activations and first-mover pilots with new ad formats. Over time, by consistently being proactive, transparent, and delivering on those stretch goals, the relationship evolved into a strategic partnership worth over 50 million a year. At
And
the end of the day, trust was built because I brought real business value, kept communications super clear, and always made sure we were aligned on both short-term wins and long-term vision. That's
amazing.
definitely something I get. Yeah, happy to dig into any specifics if that's helpful. I know a move from Google might look like a jump, so I'm curious, what are the signals for success here? Like what kind of pipeline and product market fit do your top performing sellers see? And how does Nextdoor set them up to really maximize that potential?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think, you touched on it earlier in terms of product market fit. Like Nextdoor has definitely carved a space in terms of being focused on SMB and supporting local businesses. And yes, I'm definitely curious to understand more about, someone coming from a big company like Google to sort of a more agile environment like ours. I'm curious, have you thought about, building a book of business all over again at a smaller company and environment like Nextdoor?
Yeah, for sure. And it's something I've been weighing. At Google, a lot of my growth came from expanding mature books, but honestly, I'm energized by the idea of building from a cleaner slate, especially if there's solid backing and vision from leadership. What's most important to me is the product actually solves real challenges and that there's an appetite from the market. If that's there, building relationships and opening doors is what I do best, whether it's starting from scratch or scaling up existing accounts. So I see it as less starting over and more about using my skill set to accelerate growth in a pretty focused way.
Totally, totally fair. And lastly, I'm just curious, in terms of resources that I'm sure you're used to at Google, from sales enablement and all of those supporting functions. We obviously have all of those, but a much leaner team size and capacity. Have you thought about, really owning this sales process from end to end, without necessarily some of the resources that you're used to at Google?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I'm realistic about the difference in scale. At Google, you definitely have every tool at your fingertips, but I've found a lot of that support only gets you so far. The relationship building and strategic thinking is still on the seller. I'm actually pretty attracted to the idea of having end-to-end ownership. I've thrived when I can drive my own process, make decisions quickly, and stay close to the client. As long as there's transparency about where the gaps are and leadership is invested in evolving those resources over time, I'm confident I can adapt. Sometimes cutting out the layers can actually let you move faster and have more impact.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to end it there so that we don't take up too much time, but hopefully that gave you all a sense. You can't actually practice a demo like this because the AI bot is different every time. Trust me, I learned that the hard way last night, because you actually only get 7 attempts in your first time running through a demo before it locks you out. So it's real. I didn't know what Milo was going to say. And you can see over here on the right side, you can listen to yourself if you want to play it back, which we did encourage our team to do when we first rolled it out. You can download it. You can share, your recording with your manager. You can obviously try again. But then once you go ahead and submit, come back over here on the left, you can see Cosmo, the AI tutor, will give you some feedback. This is obviously an old one that I've done, but it gives you both constructive and positive feedback. And if you don't hit all of the objectives that are laid out, it'll give you constructive feedback and actually ask you to try again. And so you can't keep advancing to different role plays until you pass the one that you're on.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious if you hit submit, how Cosmo thinks you did. Down here at the bottom. Yeah, there you go.
Drum roll.
Whoops.
Oops.
Sorry about that.
Live demo. You were doing so great. Taking on the pressure of a live demo is just above and beyond. So thank you. Oh, you passed. Excellent.
Of course.
Of course. It's always
You can
so
see at the
fast.
bottom, though, it says next time, try adding more specifics about Nextdoor's comp model or top seller success stories, which was part of the original objective. So Cosmo gives really, meaningful feedback, I would say, for an AI tutor.
I love it. And unlike doing live demos in front of an audience, it's so fascinating to be in this little safe cocoon where you can mess up and you can get it wrong and no one's really judging. So I'm curious if you want to stop sharing so we can go back to presenter mode, can you talk about, so you rolled this out at a meeting and you said, we're gonna do this new thing. Can you talk about how you presented it and then what the reaction was, Alexis?
Yeah, one second.
I'll give
Let
you a
me-
minute to.
Actually, Tony, do you want to take it for a quick second while I find my stop sharing screen?
Yeah, for sure. So,
There we go.
I think
There we go.
our team is really AI forward, right? We've seen a ton of gains from AI enablements for ourselves, for hiring teams, but this was back in February of this year, right? And that was a different world. So I'd say it was met with a healthy dose of skepticism. It was similar to Ryan's, "Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous." um, but I think it's one of those things when you get hands-on with it is where the proof is in the pudding, right? And so the feedback for us was really what I noticed in the feedback session that we did after the first few sessions was people were surprised at how it didn't really feel automated. Like you really felt like you locked into a conversation. I mean, it's not a human, but it feels real. There was appreciation, right? That we were unlocking another avenue for growth and for practice, and doubly appreciation for the fact that these are 5-minute sessions, not things that you have to carve out 90 minutes to go do the training for.
Right.
And then finally, I'd say really recognition, right? There was excitement around how do these kinds of services and like the underlying technologies create impact and opportunities for us in hiring, but also at an organizational level. So there was real enthusiasm for this being an exciting time and us leaning in rather than sort of waiting and being on the periphery.
Mhm. And Alexis, can you share, your experience of this, but maybe were there scenarios that people really liked or candidates that people enjoyed practicing on or felt challenged by maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I think what they really enjoyed, for example, like we had just made some changes to like our compensation and our offer structure. And so we were able to update one scenario like real time to give recruiters a chance to practice that. And so that was like a really meaningful role play for them. And in general, I would say like Tony mentioned, Nextdoor as a company, as a product, we're going through some pretty major transformation right now. And like any company that goes through that, there's just like a lot of change. There's a lot of communication about it. There's a lot of like information overload. And so, we formed sort of a smaller AI task force that really tried to take all of that information and distill it down to what we thought would be most relevant for learn content and for recruiters. And so I think some of the feedback we heard was like, thank you so much for like distilling all of that. And it was just a good way to remind yourself how to talk about this new sort of era of Nextdoor and the transformation that we're going through. But it was also interesting because some people would love certain candidates and some people would absolutely hate them. Milo, who I did, happened to be one that most of the team, other than our sales recruiter, they all hated except for her. So it was just interesting to hear how different people interacted with these AI bots.
Right, interesting.
Can I add one thing to that? Because that was
Please
a
do.
moment that really struck me, right? Because there was certainly the pile-on. People were like, I can't stand Milo. He's the worst. Da, da, da.
Oh, poor Milo.
But that moment was a first in my career for me, where you have recruiters comparing notes and opinions on the same candidate at the same stage on the same topics. Like that actually can't happen in real life, right? And so you have this moment where it's not a debrief after a call where it's, oh, you should have asked this, you could have asked that. It's comparing notes on what you actually did and what that resulted in. And that type of genuine collaborative learning is so rare in what we do because, like, yes, it's a team sport, but inherently you're off by yourself a lot. And so I just remember like taking a step back in that moment and feeling like this is one of those few opportunities of like true connection where you're getting the benefits of all the brain power in the room on the same topic.
Was there anything that you discovered about that? Was the sales recruiter just more used to the type of personality or the type of conversation, or did you discover something about what was making people hate him so much?
I would say, yeah, part of it, she was kind of like, well, welcome to my world. This is what I face every day talking to client partners. So she was, more used to handling some of those conversations. But I think we discovered, some of the people that struggled, at least at first, were maybe trying to talk too much rather than asking open-ended questions or like getting the AI bot to interact more. And so we discovered that if you were just kind of trying to give this whole spiel or like talk for the whole 5 minutes and you weren't even realizing that you were doing that, that's when people were really struggling with that particular scenario.
Interesting, interesting. And I know, Alexis, you talked about really enjoying practicing with an engineering candidate because that's something that you've had less exposure to in your previous experience. What was that like?
Yes, that was really tough, but important for me. At the time, I had just started leaning into engineering leadership roles. So I was feeling very overwhelmed, and it was great to have that opportunity to practice with some engineering candidates that we built. And to Tony's point, like it just really forced a lot of us to come together and sort of brainstorm and learn in a way that like we might not have otherwise done. But it definitely helped me. It really forced me to dig in and learn more about like the engineering org at Nextdoor.
So interesting. Well, I'm wondering how you balance like the benefit of going through this exercise with this AI coach, with Cosmo, with how do you do that debrief and how do you still leverage kind of the human coaching and the human interaction? And Alexis, I'll start with you.
I think so far what we're learning, it's really about like blending sort of Cosmo's real-time feedback with ongoing coaching that recruiters get, from their managers or from Tony or from the team. Like Cosmo is great at offering those immediate insights right after a scenario. And like we've said, like it's so valuable for recruiters because it's like low pressure. You can kind of reflect and learn without the anxiety of like your manager listening to your recruiter screen. But we certainly would not want to like treat Cosmo as a replacement for human coaching. The manager's feedback like really adds the context. So we're exploring like how do we weave into one-on-ones? How do you like encourage folks to do maybe just one practice a month and then share Cosmo's feedback in a one-on-one with your manager and just like really using it as sort of a jumping off point. So I would say it's for us where it's just been a balance and Cosmo helps with more day to day, but manager will really help connect all the dots.
Makes so much sense. Tony, do you see this training influencing how recruiters build trust with candidates? Can AI help humans human better?
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
But no, I think, anytime you're informed and you've practiced, you communicate with greater precision and composure, right? And that allows you to spend a lot more meaningful time with candidates. You're in active listening mode because you're not fumbling for what am I going to say next or what am I going to ask next? You're in the moment and you're present. And so and people feel that, right? That you're authentically interested in them, right? So in that way, I think it builds the skills and it builds sort of the knowledge base for recruiters that they can be far more effective in person with candidates.
What a fascinating point that the more practice you have, the more confident you are, the less you're searching for what's next. So you really truly can actively listen, and then it just leads to a more productive conversation. That's really good. I might borrow that one. All right, so I think you all were incredibly innovative and came up with this great idea, and you moved really fast. And Tony, you've pointed out a couple times, like AI is changing so quickly, but February, it was a very different world. What do you say to other talent leaders that like really want to explore with AI or maybe getting pressure to explore? Like, where do they start and what should they do? And Tony, we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I think this isn't just talent leaders. This is every leader at every company right now. And there's so much out there that you really just need to start with experimenting, right? Like there's so many ways that you can drive efficiency or quality or reimagine the way that your team impacts the company, right? AI is incredibly powerful. It's coming really fast. People need to be using it. But for talent leaders, like I think there's more of a unique opportunity to leverage like this comprehensive view that you have of the company talent landscape, how teams work together, like what they want to accomplish. And with that full picture, you can really start to imagine different ways of introducing cross-cutting services or skills and training, right, that benefit everybody. That's can be helping teams to do what they're doing better, or just reimagine again the way that they're tackling their work. So it starts with experimentation because we're still early in this journey. Again, we're referencing January and February of this year, but that trajectory is accelerating very quickly. So get out there and just tinker around and don't be afraid of getting things wrong. I think that these systems are actually designed to help you. So the best start is always the prompt that, how can you help me introduce AI into my workflow, right? It will lead you down a path.
January and February do not feel like that long ago, but my gosh, they really were. And Alexis, if people are looking to build more soft skills with AI, where do they start? And maybe you can build on what Tony said. How did you all test, maybe amongst yourself, before you rolled it out to the broader team?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say, start with like clarity, like why and what soft skills matter, to your team, and sort of like what kind of recruiting culture are you wanting to reinforce. For us, it was definitely about making sure that it's also stayed human-centered. Like we said, there is a lot of pressure to adopt, AI quickly, but we really tried to slow down and be intentional about how, not only how we rolled it out, but like emphasizing that we're just exploring this as a way to strengthen and not replace, human judgment or recruiter judgment. We didn't really want like automation just for like scale's sake. It's really like, is this going to meet the complexity of the work that we actually do? And is it going to help like encourage, the candidate experience that we want to protect and the type of thinking that we want to encourage? I would say like, kind of thinking about it like a culture amplifier kind of, and not just a training tool. So yeah, I would say similar to what Tony said, like don't just chase AI or pick things just to look like you're in the know or like advanced. I think what's really special about Learn and what we chose to do is like there's so many AI tools for like systems, processes, and this is really focused on a recruiter and their growth and their development and a candidate experience versus like, shaving 10 minutes off of a process somewhere with AI. So, we just thought about it like, how is this going to like double down on what already makes our team great?
Right. I love that. It's not about how do we throw AI in here and change a process. It's how do we get better at what we're already doing. And I love that culture amplifier. What a great way to think about it. So a question for both of you, kind of what's next? Do you have more plans to roll out more training? Is there more flavors of different candidates, or have you thought about different applications of the training you've already done?
Yeah, I think what's next is really, there's just so many opportunities that are being unlocked. So yeah, we want to continue to double down on how do we make our team better in some of these domains. But, like what's next with AI broadly, what I'm excited about is just this notion of opportunity creation and the potential for an expansion of the aperture of the candidates that we consider, right? As we have so much more of a rich understanding of what our organization is, what makes people successful here, who are candidates, we can start to shift away from some of these like generalized proxies people use for talent, right? What school did you go to? What company did you work at? What award did you blah, 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 that allows for us to consider a broader range of people and ultimately make our companies better. So I'm excited for this to, again, just do more for a wider set of people.
Yeah, agree. I mean, Tony gets to obviously think about AI and Learn, from a company-wide perspective and more broadly, but I really get to continue to focus on it, for our talent team. And so definitely more candidate personas, but I think what's next in my mind certainly is, how do we evolve Learn to work with hiring managers and hiring teams? Because we all know like candidate experience is not just on recruiters, like it's really co-created with hiring managers and hiring teams. So we've already started thinking of some Learn content for, hiring managers, especially newer ones, to help them practice giving real-time feedback or making sure that they're aligning on role clarity or like, asking those empathetic questions. So really like, how do we use Learn to like reinforce this partnership that we've built with the business over the years, where we're really like trusted recruiting partners, not just, rec fillers or order takers or whatever you want to call it.
Right. I love that. Well, I look forward to seeing all of the new ways that you use this. Alexis, maybe you can come back and demo when you've got a new use case. You did
Oh,
brilliant.
thanks,
Thank you so
Tony.
much. Thank you so much for doing that. We have a couple questions rolling in. Oh, I like this one. What is a soft skill you think every recruiter should work on, AI or not? I'll pass it to Tony, and then Alexis, you can add.
It's maybe not a soft skill per se, but I think critical thinking and understanding of your business's strategy is going to come to the forefront for recruiting, right? Because so much of the operational aspects of what we do are going to be automated or AI'd away, that you need to have a credible view on the talent coming in and how it's going to bend the arc for your organization. I also think there's this element of first principles thinking that is like, over the last decade and a half, there's been so many problems in recruiting that have been manufactured as a result of just the operating conditions, that we've focused on tactics rather than going back to like the ultimate goal, that is to build an amazing company. So things that reinforce sort of those mental models, I think, are really important.
Yeah. Alexis, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I would say like definitely, at least for us, like it's really come to light even more, like active listening and empathy, and really like how do you make sure that you are setting yourself apart from other companies, starting with the recruiter screen, and like really making sure that you understand your culture and like the product and everything that's top of mind, and that you're really selling your culture to candidates. And so like just really thinking through the soft skills that are going to help you set your recruiting team and your recruiting culture apart.
Makes so much sense. And I think anyone that's been on a conversation with a recruiter that truly knows the business and is invested in it and excited, like, it makes all the difference. It's what gets you from maybe being a passive candidate to being one that's very open to continuing the conversation. All right, a couple more questions have come in. Let's see. Is Nextdoor exploring other areas of the organization to use this tool outside of recruiter training?
Yes, we have a few teams that engage with our customers that are excited about the opportunities for replicating some of this. We're looking at homegrown things that already exist, because we have a rich database of customer inquiries. But I think that this workflow, this type of tool, parallel tracks a lot of different functions here, and we're excited about introducing more of that elsewhere.
Is anyone going to get to work with Ryan? Are you kidding me? What kind of skepticism did you face, and was there a moment when you realized this was really starting to click with the team? Alexis, I think that's a great one for you to answer.
Yeah, I would say the team had similar reaction as I did when Tony first mentioned it. You know, curious, definitely want to give it a try, but skeptical. Like we're really protective of our time and our culture. And just in general, you're like, I'm going to interact with an AI bot. Like, what is that? Is that really going to be meaningful? How's that going to go? But I think, at least for me, you know, when we first rolled this out at the beginning of the year, you know, we did it a talent team offsite, and that was really intentional. Like we did very like an abbreviated version, like very curated lesson, 1 or 2 practices. And one of our really seasoned recruiters who leads ML recruiting, who's someone that I really admire, that I learn a lot from, you know, he came back to the group discussion and was like, honestly, I thought this was going to be kind of a waste. And it was so valuable. You know, he was like, I just did not have high hopes. And it was like the AI bot was so dynamic. And even with an ML, you know, persona that we had created, it helped him realize and think through, especially when he went back and like listened to his recording. You just pick up these little things you don't even realize that you're doing. And for an area like ML, which is so competitive, and someone that I admire on our team, it really meant a lot to me that he wasn't like, you know, thanks Alexis and Tony for wasting my time. Like he was really excited about it.
What an incredibly rewarding bit of feedback, and good of him for listening. That's hard for, I think, most of us to go through the cringe-worthy experience of like, oh, I said that. Oops.
Yes.
Not easy. Not easy.
You're gonna enjoy rewatching this, Brenna?
I don't rewatch sometimes, but no, I think it's a special discipline to rewatch yourself. Maybe I'll commit to it in the spirit of improving.
Nice. I'm not going to join you, but okay. Now, on the skepticism piece, though, I do think that everybody's impression of bot has shifted dramatically, right? Where before it's like you call into the customer helpline, right? And you get that press 1 for this, and you're just like frantically hitting 0 to try to get to a human.
Talk to a human. Talk
Right?
to a human.
So it's like, but it's shifted from robotic, automated, inauthentic, mechanical to like, oh, this is actually something that there is more fluidity here.
Yeah.
So it's wild to see how fast that's come on.
In such different personality types and communication styles, what it really represents all the different types of people that you speak to, from like super engaged dynamic to like more curt, that can be a little off-putting if you're not sure how to deal with it.
That's been one of the very cool things, is to be able to create all of those candidate archetypes and move them across functions. And
Mhm.
prompts involved, like they're detailed, sure, but it's not more than what, a paragraph or something. Like it's pretty easy to stand up, and we've stood a lot of them up with other AI services, right? And so the the um the timeline from 0 to this is an effective training tool for you is much, much shorter than you would think.
Actually, you may have answered a piece of this question that just came in. Did rolling this out require in-depth training for you or your team? Is it more plug and play?
It was really much easier than I even expected. The CodeSignal team that we've been partnered with has been great, super responsive. They've actually given us advice also along the way as we've thought about how do we roll this out. So it was really easy. I mean, it was just a couple quick minutes of showing. I did a demo for our team. I kind of explained the tool, and then we kind of, broke them off into small groups. And like, we really did not get feedback on the tool itself. Like, it's a great interface. It's really, easy to use and navigate for a first time person. So that part was really awesome.
Yeah, and a dramatic departure from like you build this custom curated slide deck, and that takes you days and hours and weeks, right? And then you have to find the time when everybody's available for the 2-hour session and when they're going to pay attention for the 2-hour session. So I think that the time savings is immense on this, and it really was a quick move from thought origin to delivering to the entire team. And now we're at a point where just like edits are rapidly deployed, right? It's just like we're updating a prompt here and there, we're updating a sentence or two here and there, and it's immediately distributed to the entire team.
It's an incredible change from the type of training where you would record videos or do PowerPoints and do all of this work, and then it was very hard to roll out any sort of updates. Do you find that people proactively do this on their own time?
Yeah, I would say some do. Some are more, enticed. Like when we did the abbreviated version for offsite, and then we went through and we customized the content even more, particularly for the first section, effective recruiter screens. We know that our team likes some healthy competition, so we added in that layer of like gamification and some prizes for folks that finished all of the practices in a certain period of time. But we have seen like adoption across the entire team, and I've definitely heard people like go back to it, especially if they, for example, when we did some changes to our compensation and offer structure, that's new. Like, people want to go back and keep practicing that scenario.
And I'd say they are 100 times more likely to go back and do a practice than they are to revisit the old training slide deck that you created.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is really interesting to see, what motivates people to take their discretionary time and go back and learn. And sometimes it is, I know I love when there's like a deadline, a group of people doing that motivates me so much. Other people want to keep a streak alive. Other people are motivated by prizes. And then you have those people that just like it and do it. And it's incredible to see how you can package something up and roll it out so it really is enticing to all different types of learners.
For sure. And it's been a really cool thing, right? Where we have a small team that has coverage across the company, right? So as you start partnering with a group that you've never worked with before, this is one way to accelerate your entryway into I'm recruiting now for the sales team or for the go-to-market team or for the engineering team, right? And you get a few reps in before you're sitting with the hiring team and the managers. And so it just, again, it's one of those, the point we made earlier around if you're informed and you've practiced, you're just a lot more confident as you enter. And so you have a running start.
You can do that active listening. All right, well, we are approaching the end of our time together. It always happens so quickly. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts to share?
I think, what we've really focused on is the developmental, but like, there's so much out there that's fun too. Like developing is fun, don't get me wrong. But like, I'd say that we're in a time right now where, you owe it to yourself to be informed and to be trying things. And you can try things in a professional context, but you can also try them in a personal and fun context, where you have all the people right now who are like, how can I make dinner with what's in the fridge, right? And it's
Yeah.
recipes, or you're writing a poem for a loved one and giving that to them on Mother's Day, which is definitely what I did in 2 minutes. And hey, 2 minutes for a tearjerker, I'll take it. So I'd say, really allow your mind to wander into all the ways that you can enjoy this and benefit from it in your life, because it really is an amazing partner to have at your side.
Totally agree with what Tony said. What's been great about, his approach to this, and just the team that, he's built over the almost 6 years, is keeping that open mind and like experimenting and learning quickly. And let's just do something that we see potential in, and we'll iterate it along the way. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just being really thoughtful and just exploring. And certainly we want to try and be advanced in AI. And this was just a really, I think, fun and interesting way that, a lot of people hadn't explored yet. So it felt exciting for all of us to be part of something sort of, in early stages.
And it's that open mindset that led you to see this one application, this Brian guy, and build something incredibly impactful and really inspiring. So a huge thank you to you both. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing all your insights and your thoughts and your vision. Alexis, a very special thank you for demoing. That is not easy. Round of applause for that. I hope everybody's leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration for your own team's learning journey. And until we see you again on Leaders Unplugged, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Brenna. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.